3 spine-chilling and sinister lighthouses with unexplained horrors revealed. Over 100 years the salty winds wailed through the narrow streets of Haven's End, murmuring tales of horrors long buried. Among them loomed the infamous lighthouse, its dark silhouette cutting against the stormy horizon, a place where souls were said to vanish. The locals knew better than to approach, warning the unwary that some places hide secrets too terrifying to face. Yet, the Peterson family, desperate for a break from their struggling diner, found themselves compelled to unravel the mysteries of the lighthouse, a relic of the town's dread. As summer enveloped Haven's End, the Petersons drove along the crumbling road leading to their new vacation home. The lighthouse loomed larger with every mile, its paint peeling, windows cracked like broken promises. Suspense crackled in the air as they unloaded their bags, excitement coursing through them like adrenaline. But excitement soon twisted into unease, the lighthouse's eerie aura wrapping around them like a shroud. In those first moments, they felt the weight of 1,000 gazes, heard the ghostly whispers brushing past their ears, threatening warnings lost to the wind. Shivers danced down Lily's spine as she stepped inside, her little hands trembling against the cold doorknob. The air inside was stale, trapped, with a scent of mold that screamed of time stolen. Shadows flickered, and the wooden floor creaked, groan after groan, as if the building itself was alive and warning them to leave. Intrigued yet fearful, she began exploring the hauntingly empty halls. Old journals lined a crooked shelf, their pages crumbling like the memories trapped within. Each entry curled with tales of terrible storms and frantic searches, marred by a foreboding silence that echoed bitter truths. Suddenly, the lights flickered above, plunging them into darkness for a heartbeat before returning. Heart racing, Lily glanced back to see her family huddled together, wide-eyed and pale. Her father, Rob, muttered under his breath, "Just old wiring, just old wiring." But what if it was more? The fishermen from town had cast them pitying looks, murmuring warnings of a darkness that pulsed within those walls, whispers of disappearances tied to the very foundation upon which the lighthouse stood. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the sun dipped below the horizon, shadows loomed like dark predators, the lighthouse seemingly swelling and contracting with each heartbeat. Lily stumbled across pictures of smiling families, bygone days marked with laughter echoing throughout the once vibrant building. Yet behind those smiles lay an unshakable dread, the name of a well-respected man in town ominously inked within the margins of those same photographs. He visited, but why? A chill slithered down her spine. Paranoia slithered through the family, tension tightening like a noose. What had they stepped into? An unheard scream sliced through the night, yanking the family from their fragile security. Heartbeats quickened as they froze, breath hitching in their throats. The walls of the lighthouse pulsed like a living beast, the air thick with the scent of dread. Something dark beckoned them toward the ominous door at the end of the hall, a door that hummed with sinister energy, vibrating with warnings. As fear began to replace reason, the question loomed larger: would they escape this wretched place, or would the darkness claim them too? Just then, the lights burst into chaos, plunging them into suffocating darkness. The fetid air thickened. As the sound of footsteps echoed from the shadows, the darkness swallowed them whole. Heartbeats echoed in the silence as the Petersons stood paralyzed, fear curling around them like mist. The footfalls grew louder. Each sound reverberated through the cold walls, vibrating with an unearthly rhythm that quickened their pulses. Lily's breath hitched in her throat, and she could feel the weight of her family's dread pressing down on her shoulders. "Rob, what should we do?" Kathy whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Rob's eyes darted around, searching the suffocating shadows. He gripped Lily's hand tighter, though he feigned bravery. "Stay close," he muttered, his voice trembling. The air felt charged, electric, as if the very fabric of the lighthouse was alive, watching and waiting. They moved together toward the door at the end of the hall, each step deliberate, hesitant. As they approached, the door seemed to pulse, almost breathing a grotesque mockery of their own lives. Rob reached for the knob, but a sudden gust of wind whipped through the corridor, slamming the door shut. The sound reverberated like thunder, shaking them to their cores. A chill raced down Lily's spine. She pressed closer to her father, her mind reeling. "Let us go," Kathy urged, her voice rising in panic. But something held Rob in place. He tilted his head, as if he heard something the others could not, a low, throaty whisper emanating from behind the door. It beckoned him, coaxing with sweet, slithering words that promised revelations, truth. "Do you hear that?" he rasped, entranced. The others felt it, an insidious pull tugging at their very souls, drawing them nearer to the threshold of secrets best left undisturbed. "Dad, please!" Lily cried, her voice cracking. In that instant, a thud reverberated from the other side, sending a shockwave through Rob's resolve. He stepped back, shaking his head. "We need to leave. This isn't right." Kathy's face was pale with terror, her eyes wide and shimmering with unshed tears. The world outside was obscured by the weight of the storm, the winds howling like lost souls outside, begging to be let in. Without warning, the lights flickered again, a rapid dance of illumination and darkness. Shadows stretched like claws along the walls, warping reality. Lily's gaze darted, every fiber of her being screamed for escape. But the darkness was impenetrable, wrapping around them like a suffocating blanket. "Gather your courage," Rob urged, his voice steadier now. "We're getting out. We can't let it hold us." He backed away from the door, motioning for his family to follow him. Just as they turned, the air thickened again. A whisper slithered through the darkness, intimate and insistent. "Stay a while longer." A paralyzing dread surged through them, freezing them in place. Out of the corner of her eye, Lily spotted movement, a shadow flitting across the room behind them. Her heart raced. They weren't alone. Without thinking, she bolted down the closest staircase, urgency coursing through her veins. The creaking wood followed her descent, each step feeling like a countdown to an unseen horror lurking in the shadows. "Lily!" her mom shouted, but all that mattered was escape. The further she went, the more oppressive the air became. The ground felt alive beneath her feet, a pulse syncing with her own frantic heart. She burst through a frayed door, ending in a small room bathed in filthy moonlight. Here, time seemed to pause, caught in the web of dread woven by the lighthouse itself, and into her eyes fell an object, a dusty lantern, flickering like a dying star. It illuminated a grainy photograph nestled against it. The faces looked familiar, families, but twisted in horrifying glee, fingers clawing at the edges of darkness, dressed in old-fashioned garb amidst a chilling backdrop. Then, horror surged through her as she read the barely visible name scrawled on the back, Peterson. Had they come home to a nightmare, or were they destined to become part of the Lighthouse's collecting history? The door behind her slammed shut, and the lantern flickered wildly, casting grotesque shapes on the walls. The darkness crept closer. What would they sacrifice to escape? What unearthly price had they unwittingly entered into? Panic boiled within Lily, a raw, unfiltered terror that surged with every flicker of the dying lantern. She pressed her back against the wall, her eyes darting around the small room as she fought to catch her breath. The shadows grew longer, closing in as if drawn by her fear. She could hear the distant echo of her family's voices, muffled by the unforgiving walls. "Lily!" It was her mother's voice, a wretched cry that pierced through the suffocating darkness. It was all she could focus on. The door she had just come through shuddered violently, as if a force from the other side was trying to break through. "I can't stay," she thought desperately. "I have to find them." With shaky hands, she reached for the lantern, remembering the photographs, the faces trapped in a horror she couldn't begin to understand. They were smiling, but it wasn't happiness, it was a twisted joy, a sinister pleasure derived from the darkness itself. Her heart raced faster. "Please," she whispered, wrapping her fingers around the lantern. A momentary glow erupted as she tilted it forward. The beam revealed more than just the room. There was writing on the walls. Cryptic lines spiraled across the cracked, peeling surface, phrases repeating in a haunting chant. "You belong always here, never leave." The words coiled through her mind, tightening around her thoughts like a snake ready to strike. She pulled away, revulsion coursing through her. She needed to escape this nightmare. With a deep breath, she turned back to the door, determined to push through. But before she could reach the handle, the room dimmed, engulfing her in swallowing shadows. A low hiss filled her ears, and the lantern flickered violently. In that swirl of darkness, faces emerged, twisted, agonized visages, eyes wide in eternal fear, converging towards her. "Lily," they called, their voices a haunting chorus, echoing between the walls. "Join us." "No," she screamed, the sound raw and frantic. She whirled around, heart pounding so hard she feared it might burst. "I want to be like you. I will escape." The shadows screamed back, a horrifying sound that clawed at her sanity. She ignored it, shoving the door, bracing herself against the weight of the atmosphere pressing in. With a frantic turn of the knob, it gave way. The corridor yawned open before her, pitch black but full of promise. She stumbled out of the room, still gripping the lantern. Light spilled ahead, warping as she raced down the hall. Desperation settled in her chest, forcing her to push faster. "Mom! Dad!" she yelled, her voice mixing with the echoing calls of ancient voices that dripped with malice. Where were they? The darkness was thickening, as if the very walls wanted to swallow her whole. Then she heard it, a shuffling sound, the soft scuff of shoes against wood. Relief surged. "Kathy! Rob!" She chased the sounds, rounding a corner, breathless and frantic, but as she neared, the heavy atmosphere shifted. The air turned cold, biting into her skin. The voices swelled again, maddening echoes, weaving a tapestry of anguish and laughter. Shadows danced, flickering harshly against the walls, forming silhouettes that twisted and grinned back at her. Lily reached a door marked "Keep Out." Breathing heavily, she threw it open, throwing the lantern inside. The light flickered once more, illuminating what lay beyond. Crowded, frantic, a storm of faces stared back. The room was filled with mirrors, each reflection warped and twisted, displaying a distorted version of her family, frozen in expressions of horror, urgency, pleading. Desperation consumed her. "No! No!" she cried, stumbling back. Then, a whisper brushed against her ear. "Time to join the collection," Lily gasped, eyes widening, as she caught sight of her own reflection, a ghastly image of twisted features growing wider in horror. Just as her heart began to plummet into despair, a shadow darted behind her. What was happening? Would she become yet another face in the Lighthouse's nightmarish tableau? The shadow moved quickly, a dark blur that slipped behind the door and vanished. Lily turned, her breath caught in her throat. The mirrors reflected nothing but her own expression of terror, but she felt an undeniable presence lurking in the periphery of her vision. It taunted her, whispering promises of despair, an invitation to surrender to the inevitable. "Get out, get out!" she screamed, the desperation spilling from her lips. She backed away from the mirrors, her feet stumbling over one another. Her heart pounded against her ribcage, a frantic drum that echoed through the suffocating silence. Each reflection of her family twisted further, the glass twisting and bending as if the images themselves were desperate to escape from their prison. "No! I won tea!" she cried again, the defiance sparking a flicker of strength in her fading resolve. With shaking hands, she grabbed the lantern, the flickering light illuminating the edges of her fear. She stepped back, ready to charge forward. But before she could move, the whispers grew louder, wrapping around her like a shroud. "You belong here, we're waiting." It was as though the darkness itself was alive, hungry for her acceptance. Panic surging, she turned back toward the entrance, fighting against the chilling pull of the room. She couldn't slip into their torment, she needed to break free. As she bolted towards the door, a loud crash reverberated through the air. One of the mirrors shattered, the jagged edges spraying glass that glimmered menacingly as they fell. The shards reflected the scattered light from the lantern in twisted ways, revealing fleeting images of her mother reaching out, her mouth moving in silent screams. "Lily!" The voice, now layered with panic, resonated through the shards. It was coming from everywhere, yet nowhere. It coursed through her veins, urging her to turn back, to reach out. But a cold inkling settled in her chest, a realization that her mother was trapped within that glass, unable to cross the dark threshold. "No!" she gasped, tightening her grip around the lantern. The whispers were now rising to a crescendo, filling the space with a cacophony of haunting pleas and laughter. She spun around, heart racing, and spotted the door, the only way to escape. She couldn't stop, couldn't think, she surged toward it, the shadows clawing at her heels, threatening to drag her back. Just as she reached the doorknob, she felt a cold grip on her shoulder. She froze. The familiar touch was simultaneously warm and ice-cold, a chilling contradiction that told her she was not alone. She turned slowly, terrified of what she might see. Behind her stood the figure of her mother, but her eyes were empty, devoid of light. Dark veins marred her pale skin, the very fabric of her existence seeming to be unraveling. A hollow smile twisted her lips. "Join us, Lily, we are never truly apart," Lily screamed, a pure, raw sound of terror that echoed through the room. She fought against the grip tightening around her. "No. I want." With a surge of adrenaline, she twisted free from her mother's grasp and flung herself through the door. The lantern swung violently in her hand, nearly extinguishing in the cold rush of air. She sprinted down the corridor, the whispers trailing behind, growing fainter, but always creeping closer. "Lily, we're waiting for you." As she rounded another corner, her heart raced with a mix of hope and dread. She had to find her family. She had to escape. Moments later, she burst into an immense room, its expanse filled with flickering lanterns that cast eerie shapes across the walls. A gasp escaped her lips as she realized she wasn't alone. Figures loomed in the shadows, some familiar, others unrecognizable. Each face appeared more grotesque than the last, all twisted expressions of the lost and the damned. "Help us," they whispered together, the echo carrying through the dark hall. Lily hesitated, the growing realization dawning on her. These were the people who had vanished, trapped in the lighthouse just as she was in endless torment. "Join us." Her hand trembled, the lantern flickering dimly. She wondered if she could fight them, or if she was too late. But in that moment of uncertainty, the lantern sputtered and went dark, silence engulfed her, plunging her into pitch black. "Lily," the call came again, softer this time, wrapped in the stillness. It was the voice of her mother, a gentle tug in the darkness, coaxing her to step closer. What would she do next? Would she venture into the darkness where the shadows tangled, or fight the chilling pull of the voices haunting her from every corner? The question hung in the air, suffocating, waiting for her answer. Lily stood in total darkness, paralyzed by fear. The call, simple yet laced with her mother's despair, echoed around her. Lily, it curled around her like a serpent, inviting her deeper into the shadows. Her breath was shallow, fingers trembling as they brushed the glass shards scattered on the floor. They shimmered like eyes, glinting with memories and regrets. She fought the urge to reach for them, terrified of what she might see. The weight of a familiar presence pressed down on her, the echoes of whispers and silent screams filled the air, building a wall between her and freedom. "Fight, just fight," she whispered to herself, each word a desperate plea. She forced her legs to move, feeling her way along the wall, fingers tracing the cold, rough surface. Suddenly, the lantern flickered back to life, the dim glow slicing through the darkness. She spun around, illuminating the twisted faces that surrounded her. Were they just figments of her imagination? Or were they the souls lost to the lighthouse, waiting for another to take their place. "Lily, help us!" they implored, voices overlapping in a chorus of anguish. Their eyes, once bright, were now dull, like faded photographs. The knowledge of their fates filled her with dread. She didn't want to become one of them. "No!" she shouted, pushing forward, determined to escape this nightmare. But the figures surged, blocking her path. "Join us, Lily," they intoned, their words merging into a soft hum, hypnotizing, like a lullaby spun with sorrow. She shook her head, fighting against the tide of despair. With renewed resolve, she shoved past them, heart racing as she plunged deeper into the darkness. The whispers turned to wails, a cacophony of childhood fears and fragmented memories. "You can't leave, you belong here." With every step, her resolve was tested by pain and fear. Memories of laughter and warmth filled her mind, but they twisted into shadows. The suffocating darkness enveloped her, drawing closer. "No more!" she cried. "I want to be trapped." She raced through the darkness, dodging outstretched hands and twisted bodies. The hallways seemed to stretch, manipulating her sense of direction. As the wails of the figures grew louder, panic surged through her. She had to find a way out. Then she saw a light flickering in the distance. The tiniest glimmer shot through the oppressive blackness. Desperation flared, fueling her steps as she hurtled toward it. Inside the brightening glow, she found an old, ornate wooden door, slightly ajar. The whispers diminished, almost hesitant to cross into the light. Heart pounding, she pushed it wide and stumbled inside. Suddenly, she found herself in a room filled with old photographs. Images of people long forgotten stared back at her with lifeless eyes. Each picture captured moments of loss, despair, and faces that were disturbingly familiar. Her eyes widened in horror as it dawned on her. These were her own family members, their smiles contorted into expressions of pleading as if begging her to save them. Memories flooded in, and she staggered back, realization crashing over her. They, too, were trapped in this lighthouse, bound to the darkness that now surrounded her. She turned to flee, but the door slammed shut behind her with a deafening thud. "Lily!" Her mother's voice rose from outside, shrill and desperate. "You need to come back. You can't leave us." Panic gripped her throat. The room tightened around her, a cage of lost souls. She pounded on the door. "No! I want to let you take me." But even as she fought, a part of her felt themselves fading, drawn to those familiar voices. They coaxed her closer, promising safety, warmth, and love if she only surrendered. Her breath quickened as shadows danced on the walls, morphing into fingers that reached for her. The enticing pull warred with her instinct to escape, trapping her in a struggle as old as time. Suddenly, the gentle surface of the door began to ripple, distorting, almost liquid-like. She backed away, confusion and horror colliding in her mind. The room felt alive, shifting around her. Just then, a sudden crash shattered the moment. The back wall splintered, revealing a dark void, a gaping mouth that swallowed sound and light alike. "Lily, it's time." The call echoed again, drawing her nearer, promising reunion. She hesitated at the edge. What would she sacrifice to claim her family? Would their reunion bring freedom or damnation? The abyss loomed ominously, and Lily stood poised at the precipice. Could she brave the darkness once more, or had she already sealed her fate? The void beckoned her with a malicious grin, waiting patiently. What choice would she make? Would it lead to salvation or fury? The void pulsed with an energy that felt like it was squeezing the breath from her lungs. Lily's mind raced, images of her family flickering like candles threatened by a storm. Abandoning them wasn't an option, yet stepping into the abyss could lead her into untold horrors. "Lily," the voice slithered again, wrapping around her like fog, but this time it felt different. Not comforting, not familiar. It was sharp, eager. The figures outside the door pulsated, their desperate faces now twisted into silent screams, urging her to understand that all was not as it seemed. Without thought, she turned back to the wall of photographs. She needed to know what had happened to her family, the truth hidden in this sickening sea of memories. With shaking hands, she reached out, touching the glass over each face: uncle, grandmother, little brother, until a cold shiver shot up her arm, a shock that turned her blood to ice. With each skin contact, images flooded her mind, her mother's laughter, the warmth of family dinners, but they twisted into nightmarish visions. They were anchored by the same warped sorrow that held her trapped, an echo of memories lost to the dark. And then it happened. The wall quaked, the screams reverberated 1,000-fold, and the photographs began to morph. Faces melted and shifted, blending into a gruesome tableau of agony and despair. The realization struck her: this wasn't merely a collection of memories. These were souls, caught between realms, tethered to misery, begging for release. "Lily, don't look away," a voice cried out. Her mother. But the warmth in her tone was gone, replaced by fear that pricked at Lily's resolve. The shadows above shifted, and fingers emerged, clawing at the walls, hungry for release. She turned back to the door. It trembled, vibrating with the weight of years spent holding back whatever lay beyond. If she wasn't going to walk into the abyss, she had to escape this room, a tomb for lost souls. Taking a step toward the door, she felt the tug of her family, their phantoms rattling calmly, but their eyes were now filled with despair, not love. "You can't leave," they whimpered in unison, trying to chain her effectively to the walls. "No. Not again," Lily shouted. In that moment, the ghosts shrieked, a primal wail that slammed into her like a wall of ice. The door began to ripple violently, as if something more sinister was knocking to be let in. Desperation clawed at her chest. She charged forward, pounding on the door, fists aching with the effort. "Let me out." But the door only laughed, echoing the cries of those forgotten behind her, their faces blurring as shadows consumed her vision. Then, it changed. The dark void behind her cracked open wider than before, an inviting maw of twisted shadows hungry for warmth. Instead of pulling her in, an unseen force thrust her against the door, shaking it free from its hinges until it flew open. Through the splintered wood lay an expanse, a soaked, stormy beach beneath a darkened sky, waves crashing violently. The air was heavy with storm and sorrow, but it felt real. It was freedom. With one last harried glance behind her, she bolted through the doorway, pain searing her chest as if the weight of every invisible chain broke in an electric jolt. But the shadows whispered behind her, their voices turning desperate. "Don't leave us, Lily. Stay." As she stepped onto the sand, the voices faded. Yet, an unsettling shiver rippled down her spine. The shadows loomed, growing fierce and suddenly insistent. The lighthouse tower above her, its windows glazed with gloom, beckoned with promises of shadows lost, but somewhere deeper in that structure, a flicker of light glimmered, lingering, waiting. What truth was hidden there? What became of those who stepped forward into the dark? Lily hesitated. The choice loomed before her: again face the lighthouse or embrace the unknown. Would the light lead to salvation or deeper despair? "Which path will you choose, Lily?" The ominous reminder of that dreadful space echoed as she felt a chilling breath grazing the back of her neck. The lighthouse watched, keen and hungry. What lay within? Would she dare find out? The waves crashed, their relentless roar drowning out all sense of reason in Lily's mind. The lighthouse loomed above her, an ancient sentinel that promised secrets and shadows. Her heart raced. What if the light she saw was nothing but a trap, a way to draw her closer to the edge of eternity? Taking a deep breath, she stepped onto the path leading to the structure. Each footfall felt heavier, as if the weight of every ghostly whisper behind her pressed down on her shoulders. Shadows skimmed the ground, teasing at her heels, coaxing her to turn back, but something stronger pulled her forward. The air was thick, as if every breath she took was an act of defiance against the despair that surrounded her. The light flickered intermittently, drawing her nearer with a rhythm that matched her racing heart. She reached the entrance, its heavy door hanging ajar. It creaked open slowly, revealing a darkened interior that smelled of mildew and the ocean's brine. Inside, a spiral staircase wound its way upward, shrouded in shadow, but Lily's gaze was drawn to the faint glow at the top. As she ascended, the steps groaned beneath her, echoing the despair of the lost souls behind her. They were fading, but their whispers lingered, threading through her mind. You shouldn't be here. Don't. The air grew colder, a chill that seeped into her bones. As she reached the top, the light pulsed in a blinding flash, stunning her. And then, it revealed a room saturated with regret and sorrow. The lantern sat in the middle, its glass cracked, a single flickering flame desperately fighting the gnawing darkness. Surrounding it, photographs hung, just like the ones from her past. But they were different. Each captured a moment of despair, their expressions twisted, mouths gaping in silent screams. Lily's stomach churned. "What is this?" she gasped, stumbling back. She turned to leave but found her exit barred. The door slammed shut, trapping her inside with the memory of anguish. Suddenly, the lantern flared brighter, illuminating the faces surrounding her. It was as if they were watching her, waiting. "You came looking for answers, but we are the truth," a voice echoed, deep and hollow, resonating within her bones. "Who are you?" she demanded, trembling. "We are the Forsaken, trapped between worlds because you walked into our memories." In a flash, the images around her transformed. Scenes of her life intertwined with theirs. Moments of grievance, loss, and sorrow spilled into her mind like a tidal wave. "Stop it!" she screamed, clutching her head. "I didn't mean to." Too late. They shrieked in unison, an onslaught of fear that warped the flame to an inferno. The shadows pressed in, thick as smoke, suffocating in their embrace. "You must choose, stay with us forever, or become the light that sets us free." Lily felt the heat of their torment weighing on her. If she embraced the light, would it save her or consume her entirely? "Make your choice, Lily." The voice thundered, the sound suffocating her. She could feel her heart pounding in her throat, her whole being torn between the promise of freedom and the terrifying possibility of losing her very soul. In that moment, she saw a door flicker into existence behind her, an escape. But would it lead her back to her family, or merely trap her in another nightmare? Would she brave the light, or gamble on a hope she couldn't grasp? The eerie silence that followed felt electric as she hesitated, torn by the horrors around her and the flickering possibility of freedom, each second stretching into eternity. What would she choose? Lily stood at the precipice of dread, the air thick and oppressive, a physical weight pressing against her chest. The flickering light cast monstrous shadows that danced mockingly across the walls, twisting the agony of the faces surrounding her into grotesque shapes. She could still feel their cold eyes on her, heavy with expectations, their voices reverberating in her skull. "Make your choice." Panic clawed at her throat. The specter of the door beckoned as brightly as the lantern, but fear held her fixated like a deer in the headlights. What lay behind that door? Safety, or another abyss? She peered at the door's frame, the edges shimmering like a mirage, offering hope. But the lantern pulsed again, almost violently, spitting sparks into the air, snapping her attention back. "Stay, and know our suffering. Leave, and maybe, just maybe, you'll extinguish the pain we carry," they hissed in unsettling harmony. Her heart raced faster, each beat a drum echoing against the thick silence. "Why me?" she croaked, desperation wrenching her voice. "Why must I decide?" A cold laughter emerged from the shadows, a sinister sound that wrapped around her. "Because you ask the questions we could not answer. You seek what we lost. Will you pay the price?" Lily felt the walls closing in, the memories pulling her deeper into their grasp. She staggered back, but there was nowhere to retreat, each step driving her closer to either salvation or doom. The weight of hundreds of anguished souls bore down on her, and she felt their despair seep into her bones like a cold tide. "Your family," a whisper echoed with chilling clarity. "Don't you want to protect them? Save them from this fate?" Her breath hitched. The thought of her parents, her younger brother, trapped in the mundane while she stumbled into this darkness. It made her furious. She couldn't let the shadows win. Yet, the lure of the light promised an otherworldly escape. Somewhere in that flickering glow was the possibility of clarity. Make the choice. The haunting voices cried, a chorus that reverberated off her mind like a funeral dirge. Stay with us, and we shall unveil the truth of your origins. Leave, and you will be haunted by our cries forever. They drew closer, their faces morphing into grotesque reflections of her family, distorted, frightened versions of those she loved, trapped in an endless cycle of despair. Could it be true? She felt bile rise in her throat, fear clawing desperately at her resolve. With a final glance at the door, she opened her mouth to scream for release. But the words died on her lips as the lantern flared to life, casting her in a dazzling yet terrifying blaze. The shadows shrieked, recoiling from the sudden brightness, yet Lily felt it beckon her. It promised understanding, a greater vision beyond earthly pain. Was it a light of truth or deceit? I choose, she breathed, her eyes darting between the searing light and the malevolent shapes around her, but before she could complete her thought, the lantern exploded into a cascade of flaring sparks, engulfing her in broken colors. The once familiar faces of her family twisted into anguished wails as the world began to dissolve around her. Darkness rushed in, swallowing her whole, leaving nothing but a whisper in the void. Just as quickly, she found herself standing back at the very start of the path leading to the lighthouse, the door still ajar. Everything looked unchanged, but the silence resonated with a different kind of tension. Had she made it out? Or was this merely another layer of the trap? A sense of creeping dread trickled down her spine as she took a step forward. The light from the lighthouse flickered ominously, and she felt a sharp pull urging her to turn back, both familiar and terrifying. But what was waiting for her on the other side of that threshold? And was there truly any escape from the clutches of the lighthouse's dark secret? The ground felt unstable beneath Lily's feet, an unsettling grip of uncertainty sucking her into a whirlpool of dread. The door gaped open, revealing a narrow passage shrouded in flickering shadows. An icy wind whispered past her, wrapping its fingers around her ankles, taunting her with the weight of the unknown. Welcome back, a voice called from the depths, impossibly familiar yet twisted, like the echo of her own thoughts. She hesitated. Could it really echo her own voice, or was it the malignant soul from the lantern? Anxiety knotted in her stomach. She rubbed her hands together, the friction offering little warmth against the encroaching chill. With each careful step, the dim interior of the lighthouse unfolded. The walls stretched outward, swallowing her within their grasp. Drifting whispers flitted through the air, dark and weighty, twisting into sentences half-formed. She returns to join the choir of the lost. The sight of the staircase spiraling upward caught her eye. It beckoned, a dark beacon promising answers and perhaps a way out. But what horrors lurked in those shadows above? Were souls waiting to ensnare her, just as they had done before? Her heart thundered in her chest as she remembered those pained reflections staring back at her. Lily, the voice drifted again, more defined now, emerging from the darkness at the top of the stairs. We've waited for a long, long time. Gritting her teeth, she began the ascent. Each step strained underfoot, creaking ominously. With every inch upwards, silence compressing around her thickened, nearly suffocating. She felt the shadows close in, hungry and hostile. A sickly wave of nausea washed over her. She squeezed her eyes shut, willing the dread to pass. Your choice was not made in vain, the voice crooned. You carry the key within yourself, but do you dare to unlock the door? At the top, a heavy wooden door loomed, illuminated by the eerie glow of lanterns flickering within. It bore no handles, just an indented area where her palm fit perfectly. Terror swept through her, tales of the lighthouse ringing in her ears, stories of ancient sailors reporting strange lights, of boats steering dangerously close, oblivious to fate. Your family awaits, the voice cooed, full of promises and hidden dark. We are bound by blood. Lily's heart raced. What did that mean? She shivered, remembering the distorted faces of her loved ones that had haunted her in the dark. Was she destined to join them in this twisted fate, or to become another echo in the Lighthouse's song of despair? Open the door, it urged, the tone shifting to something almost pleading. Find the truth or abandon hope. The indecision gripped her like an iron vice. If she opened the door, would she unearth more pain? Would it lead to the end of her family's suffering or drag her deeper into their anguish? Doubts clouded her mind as she hovered against the threshold, the very air around her vibrating with anticipation. Oh, but don't you want to see? The voice slithered close, tainted with something sweeter now, as if tempting her with secrets that could change everything. Everything you love, everything taken shall be unveiled. Lily clenched her jaw, straining against the weight of her fears, battling the darkness poised to swallow her. With shaking hands, she pulled her palm back and took a deep breath. Maybe there was a chance, a crumb of hope nestled within the horror, but just as she gathered her courage, the lighthouse rumbled, its foundations shifting at her defiance. The shadows writhed, contorting in grotesque anguish. What will you do, Lily? They chorused, the voice now a cacophony of pleas and threats. Will you fight? She felt her pulse race, her pulse quickening with an intoxicating mixture of fear and anger. The door trembled, threatening to explode with the secrets it contained, and she couldn't tell if it was challenge or invitation. Face us, or lose everything. Lily's grip on the door tightened. Did she dare open it? Or was this just the beginning of a darker horror? And what awaited behind that imposing barrier? Could either redeem her or plunge her deeper into the abyss. Lily stood before the heavy wooden door, her heart a drum in her chest, each beat echoing with a memory of despair and resolve. The shadows danced impatiently around her, their whispers curling like smoke, taunting her with promises of truth and torment. As she placed her palm against the indented wood, a surge of warmth flooded her. It felt familiar, anchoring her in the storm of fear swirling within. Open the door, the voice pleaded, softer now. Unlock the truth, Lily. Taking a deep breath, she pushed her trembling fingers against the door. It creaked open with a haunting groan, revealing a room bathed in soft, flickering light, a stark contrast to the shadows that clawed at her heels. Her breath caught as she stepped inside, the air thick with memories that felt both welcoming and suffocating. At the center stood a grand mirror, its surface rippling with an ethereal sheen. And there, at the edges, her family appeared, familiar faces twisted in agony, yet she saw the flicker of hope within their eyes. They were trapped, bound in a silence that echoed louder than any scream. Lily. Her mother gasped, the sound weighted with both love and despair. Help us. All that fear, all those years of pain, coiled in her heart like a tightly wound spring. I will, she shouted, her voice fierce against the chilling atmosphere. I will save you. As her resolve hardened, the reflections shifted violently, their expressions changing. They didn't just look trapped, they looked alive, desperately seeking a way out but unable to transcend the glass. Panic surged through her as she felt the tug of those lost souls, their mouths moving as if to speak, but only muffled cries reached her ears. Do you see? The voice whispered, now deeper, resonating with an ancient power that sent shivers coursing through her. You have the choice to release them, to set their souls free. Lily nodded, understanding dawning with painful clarity. She had to confront the pain inside herself. She took a step closer to the mirror, her hand trembling as it hovered just inches from the surface. The moment her palm connected with the glass, a shockwave of light erupted, washing over her in a blinding brilliance. The room trembled, and memories flooded through, their laughter around a dinner table, her mother's warm embrace, and her brother's sunny smiles. But, as quickly as they filled her mind, they darkened, twisted into memories of loss and sorrow, moments torn apart by the darkness that had once claimed them. Fight, Lily! They shouted in unison, voices rising to a crescendo. Fight for us! Then she saw it, the ebb and flow of their despair surged around them like shadows, trying to pull her in, to silence her. With every ounce of strength left in her, she screamed, no more. I'm breaking this cycle. With those words, the lantern she still held pulsed to life in her grip. Its light washed over the mirror, illuminating the true shapes trapped within. Each face captivated her, their despair mingling with hope. The more she focused, the more vibrant they became, glowing as though their energy pulsed with each heartbeat. "Lily, it's not too late," her mother's voice broke through the chaos, tender yet filled with an urgency that tore at her heart. But was this the way? Taking a leap into the light might lead them to freedom, or it could snatch her away from the physical world forever. With each breath, she drew strength from within. "I choose to break this curse," she declared, as the air thickened around her, almost alive. The shadows recoiled, their howls of desperation rising into chaos. Feeling the warmth of their collective spirit entwining with her own, Lily raised the lantern high, its light exploding in a cascade of color, surrounding her like a comforter of hope. The mirror crackled as the light pierced through, illuminating the faces of her family, their pain shifting to resolve. "Together!" she shouted, thrusting the lantern closer to the mirror. In that instant, the blinding light erupted fiercely, engulfing the mirror in a brilliant flash that consumed the room. The cries suddenly turned to gasps, breaths stolen as warmth flooded her. Memories poured into her, stories of laughter in faded autumn leaves, moments wrapped in the glow of familial love. And as she embraced them, she felt their connection solidify around her. When the glare finally subsided, she blinked, realizing the room transformed. The mirror had shattered, shards glimmering like stars scattered across a night sky, but the faces were gone. Instead, nothing but a calm serenity replaced the chaos. Lily stood alone for a moment, her chest heaving. Had she truly freed them? Had she banished the shadows? As those thoughts wrapped around her heart, the air felt lighter, and the overwhelming sense of dread lessened, replaced with a gentle hum of hope filling the silence. Then, as if a weight lifted from her shoulders, she turned and walked toward the door, stepping back through the threshold she had entered. Outside, the storm had cleared, the stormy ocean reflecting serene colors beneath a bright sky. A sense of calm washed over her as she met the horizon, filled with the ghosts of a past she had triumphed over. She knew they would always be a part of her, their memories woven into her existence, enlightening her journey ahead. As she stepped beyond the lighthouse, she felt all eyes upon her. The souls once trapped were now free, watching her with gratitude, and finally, she let the world that once terrified her flow back into her life. And as the lighthouse faded into the distance, Lily carried their stories, their love, and their light with her into the dawn of a new beginning. Now, before we end, I need you to pay attention. If you enjoyed this spine-chilling conclusion, you need to subscribe now so you never miss exclusive stories like this one. Smash that like button right away, it really fuels the algorithm and keeps us going. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories. What do you think will happen to Lily next? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this epic conclusion. Your support is everything.